I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Emily. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold, as she said, "Mom, we're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your truck. We needed the money. Bye." And just like that, she hung up. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing for her, and she discarded me like garbage. But I didn't cry. I took a deep breath and, shockingly, I smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Marion Hale. I am 71 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I became a widow 6 months ago. My husband, Arthur, died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast, just like we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had prepared coffee with cream for me, toasted bread, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Emily had been more present in my life, or so I believed. She came to visit 3 times a week. She helped with the funeral arrangements, took me to the grocery store, and even suggested I get a full medical checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she would say with that smile I once mistook for love, but now I know it was convenience. The beach house had been our sanctuary for years. Arthur and I bought it when Emily was 15. Through hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we went there, building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Emily would bring her boyfriends, and later her husband, Brandon. I cooked for everyone, cleaned, did the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never imagined she would see it as nothing but money. And the old Ford pickup truck, Arthur cherished it like a child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil religiously, and always parked it under the same tree. Emily knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last piece of him that still smelled like his cologne. When she hung up, I sat there on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by coughing and sighing strangers. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something shifted inside me, a strange calm I hadn't felt since Arthur's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Arthur had handed me a manila envelope. "Marion, put this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it after some time, but only when you're ready." I had tucked it away without much thought. After the funeral, drowning in grief and paperwork, I simply forgot it existed. But it was still waiting for me. The nurse stepped out and called my name. The doctor examined me and said I was in good health for my age. That I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere, on that envelope. On Emily's voice, cold and transactional, and how Brandon was likely behind everything. He never liked me. To him, I was an obstacle. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. According to Emily, I no longer had a car. But as I waited, I couldn't help but smile again. There was something poetic about all of this. My daughter thought she had stripped me of everything. But she didn't know my husband. Arthur was a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I took a seat by the window. I watched the city pass by, the houses, the stores, people rushing with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had my own, and I was about to uncover them. When I arrived home, I went straight to my bedroom. I opened the dresser drawer. The envelope was there, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel multiple documents inside. Arthur had written my name across the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was getting dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar evening shadows that used to frighten me after he died. But not tonight. Tonight, the shadows felt like company. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside changed everything. There were legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Arthur. My eyes filled with tears as I saw his handwriting again. "My dear Marion, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worry." He continued. "Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just own the beach house. We own 6 other properties. including the apartment building where Emily and Brandon live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are wealthy, my love, you always were. Now it's just on paper. My hands trembled as I looked through the documents. Deeds to houses across different neighborhoods. A downtown condo, a small coastal motel, and yes, the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Arthur had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, under a company name I had never heard before. And according to the documents, I was the sole heir of that company. Arthur Holdings, Inc. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed, with amounts that seemed unreal. Arthur had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently, he had also been a brilliant investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence. In the letter, he explained, I kept it secret because if Emily ever learned how much we had, her behavior would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. What cruel irony. Our daughter had abandoned me believing I had nothing, when in truth, I had everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching the old furniture Emily once criticized as outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5 years old, laughing on Arthur's lap. Where did that little girl go? When did she turn so cold? The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Emily again. Her voice sounded softer now, but I had already learned to be wary of those changes in tone. Mom, we already transferred the money from the house and the truck, she said. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share? I kept my voice calm. Yes, we obviously weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for our investment in Europe. Brandon has an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own things. I see. And when do you leave, honey? This afternoon. Our bags are packed. We'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. Don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that fits your needs. Fits my needs. As if she knew anything about my needs. Okay, Emily, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. She hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand. And for the first time in months, I laughed, really laughed. The situation was so absurd it turned comic. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own life, and spoken to me with insufferable condescension, all to fund a European adventure that would likely crumble. But what stung wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she erased me, 45 years of sacrifice dismissed in a 2-minute call. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them but felt like a mockery to me. They had sold the beach house for less than it was worth, clearly in a rush, and they had sold Arthur's truck for a pittance. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Emily and Brandon load their suitcases into a cab. He carried 2 huge roller bags, she had an expensive-looking carry-on. They laughed, kissed, and made plans like 2 teenagers who believed life owed them a miracle. They never looked up at my window. They didn't say goodbye. When the cab turned the corner, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and spread Arthur's documents out before me. I had decisions to make. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and drag everything into the light. But something told me there was a better way, an educational way. I called Mr. Daniel Whitaker, the attorney who had handled Arthur's affairs. He had been at the funeral, had offered condolences, and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I need you, I said. Mrs. Hale, it's good to hear from you. He replied warmly. How are you holding up? I'm well, Mr. Whitaker. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents of Arthur's that I don't fully understand. Of course. Can you come by my office tomorrow morning? The following morning, I dressed with more care than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Arthur always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair and brushed a bit of color onto my lips. In the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw strength. Mr. Whitaker's office occupied an old but dignified building with marble floors and tall windows. He greeted me with a kind smile. But when I laid the documents on his desk, his expression changed entirely. "Mrs. Hale, this is much more than I imagined," he said, flipping through the deeds and certificates. "Arthur was a very astute man. According to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know," I said gently. "I've reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." He explained that everything was in order, that the documents were legitimate, and that I was the rightful owner of the entire portfolio. He also confirmed something I already suspected: the sale of the beach house was illegal because Emily had no right to sell it. "We can get the house back immediately, Mrs. Hale," he said, "and we can proceed with legal action against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Whitaker," I said, "I don't want to pursue legal action. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain a secret for now. Can you help me?" He paused, studying me. Then he nodded. "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly get the beach house back, do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale, and I need you to help me gain direct control over all my properties. Especially the building where my daughter lives." "I understand. That will take a few weeks. But it's entirely feasible." "Perfect. And Mr. Whitaker, no one can know I am behind any of this." "Not yet." He nodded again. "You have my word." When I left his office, it felt as if I had woken from a very long sleep. I walked through downtown, watching people carry on with their normal lives, oblivious to the quiet revolution taking place in mine. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her daughter. In secret, I was a wealthy woman carefully orchestrating the recovery of her assets. Mr. Whitaker worked efficiently, and every few days he called with updates. I stayed in my home for the time being. It was mine, after all, though Emily probably imagined I'd soon be crammed into a single room somewhere. Each morning I ate at the same table where Arthur and I had shared so many years of quiet companionship. Then I walked the neighborhood. People greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity reserved for recent widows. Evelyn Harper, my neighbor of many years, approached me one afternoon while I was watering the front garden. "Marian, is it true Emily went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Evelyn," I said. "She went with Brandon. They have business plans." "And how are you going to live, dear? Everyone knows Arthur didn't leave much money." "If you only knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Evelyn, I'll be fine." "Do you need anything? I can bring food, help you with groceries." "You're very kind, but truly, I'm okay." These conversations repeated everywhere: the butcher, the baker, the corner store. People spoke to me in that soft tone they use with the unfortunate. And I nodded and thanked them. A part of me even enjoyed the performance. It felt like living a double life. One Wednesday morning, Mr. Whitaker called. "Good news, Mrs. Hale. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any trouble. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Whitaker. And the apartment building where Emily lives?" "That one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company. But we need some administrative changes to give you direct control. That should take about 2 more weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Emily. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks. And I hadn't heard a single word. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed. But I knew that was going to change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Arthur and I had taken hundreds of times. The house looked exactly as I remembered: small, cream-painted, with a porch facing the ocean. The recent would-be owners had placed a few potted plants on the steps. But otherwise, it was the same. I sat across the street and looked at it for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Emily was little, running along the shore and building sandcastles. Arthur grilling fish while I made salads in the kitchen. Emily bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Brandon. All those joyful moments she had reduced to a simple transaction. An older gentleman stepped out and noticed me sitting on the curb. He approached with polite concern. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering," I said. I knew the former owners. "What a shame about what happened," he said. "We were told the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell fast. We thought it was a bargain. But it turned out the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the house." "Did you know them personally?" "No. Everything was through intermediaries. We were told the daughter was handling it because the mother couldn't." Sad situation. "If only you knew," I thought. "I'm glad you didn't lose your money." "Yes. We'll have to look for another place now. We really liked this one." I left with a heavy heart, not because of the finances, but because of the ease with which Emily had lied. She had invented a story about my illness, used my supposed vulnerability to justify her betrayal. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings. I was an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Mr. Whitaker again. "I want to get Arthur's truck back, too." "That will be more difficult," he said. "The truck was in your name. But your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it." "How is that possible?" "Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months after Arthur died." "Do you remember?" I vaguely remembered signing some papers Emily brought. She said they were to facilitate funeral and inheritance arrangements. I had been fogged by grief. I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "Is there any way to get it back?" "We can try, but it will be complicated. We would need to prove you signed under deception." "Let's do it," I said. "I want to get back everything they took." And for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. The following weeks settled into a strange rhythm. In the mornings, I was the poor, abandoned widow everyone believed me to be. I went to buy bread, nodded at the sympathetic looks of neighbors, and kept my head bowed like a woman newly broken. But in the afternoons, I became someone else entirely, someone my daughter would never have recognized. I was a businesswoman. I studied Arthur's documents, called Mr. Whitaker, tracked every legal proceeding. I learned terms like asset protection, corporate veil, and irrevocable deed, words I had never once needed in my 71 years, but which now brought me fierce satisfaction. And with each passing day, I felt Arthur's presence more, not in grief, but in guidance. He had prepared everything. All I had to do was follow the path he laid out. I discovered that Arthur had been far more strategic than I ever knew. Every investment was deliberate. The apartment building where Emily lived wasn't just profitable, it was located in an area rapidly increasing in value. I also discovered something else. Brandon had extensive debt. He had taken out loans using their apartment as collateral, completely unaware that he wasn't the legal owner. Once the banks discovered the truth, he would face serious consequences. One Friday afternoon, Mr. Whitaker called with an update that made my breath catch. "Mrs. Hale," he said, sounding almost triumphant, "we've completed all the paperwork. You now have total control over all the properties. And about Arthur's truck, you'll be happy to know we recovered it." The buyer was someone I knew, and once I explained the situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small compensation. I closed my eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Is there anything else you require?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I want you to prepare a letter for my daughter." "What kind of letter?" "An eviction notice." Silence stretched across the line. "Mrs. Hale, are you sure?" "Completely. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she will learn how important I truly am." "I understand. Should I send it to Europe?" "No," I said. "Deliver it when she returns. I have a feeling it will be soon." I wasn't wrong. That very evening, Evelyn Harper, my longtime neighbor, knocked on my door looking breathless, a grocery bag dangling from her arm. "Marion, you won't believe what I heard. Brandon is in trouble with the bank. My brother-in-law works there. He said Brandon took out loans signed under Emily's name. But now the bank found out the apartment isn't his." "Oh?" I asked lightly. "And that's not all. Rumor is, he lied to Emily about the business in Europe. There was never any deal. He just wanted to run from his debts." "Is that so?" I poured her tea. What a complicated situation. But inside, I felt neither shock nor pity. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had expected. Emily had trusted Brandon, sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she would be forced to confront who he truly was. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, looking up at the stars. Arthur used to say stars were the souls of those who had lived fully, watching over their families from above. If that was true, he was watching now, watching his plan unfold with perfect precision. "Thank you, my love," I said softly. "Thank you for protecting me even after your death." The next morning, Mr. Whitaker called. "Mrs. Hale, your daughter just arrived back in the country. She's at the airport." "Alone?" "Yes. It seems Brandon stayed in Europe. Word is, they had a major argument." "I see. Did you send the letter?" "I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up and stood in the kitchen, feeling a mix of anticipation and resolve. After so many weeks of silent planning, the first real move was about to begin. Emily was about to discover that her mother was not the helpless victim she believed. Emily returned to her apartment on a Tuesday night. I knew this because Evelyn, who seemed to have informants everywhere, came to tell me the next morning. I saw her. Marion. She came with just one suitcase. She looks terrible, pale, hollow-eyed, as if she cried all the way home. And something strange, when the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask for the emergency copy. Interesting. Brandon must have kept the keys. Or perhaps Emily discovered something so devastating that she fled without them. Either way, she was back, and very soon, she would receive my welcome. That same afternoon, Mr. Whitaker called once more. "Mrs. Hale, the notice was delivered an hour ago." The doorman confirmed she took it in person. "Perfect. How long did we give her?" 30 days, as the law requires. "But Mrs. Hale," he hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Mr. Whitaker," I said calmly, "my daughter expelled me from my own house with a 2-minute phone call. She sold everything I had without asking. Now she will learn that actions have consequences." "I understand," he said quietly. "I just wanted to be certain." That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake imagining Emily's face as she opened the letter. First confusion, then disbelief, then panic. She would probably think it was a mistake. She would call to verify. And when she discovered it was real, I wondered, would she scream? Or would she cry? The answer came sooner than I expected. At exactly 8 o'clock the next morning, the phone rang. She had waited for business hours. Of course she had. "Mom," she said, and her voice was raw, trembling. "I need to talk to you. Urgently." "Good morning, honey. How was Europe?" "Mom, I don't have time for that. I got a letter last night, from some company. It says I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. That must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this?" "An eviction notice?" I asked, feigning surprise. "How strange. From whom?" "It says, Arthur Holdings, Inc." She exhaled shakily. "Do you know that company?" "Mom, please, tell me this isn't real." Arthur had used his own name. How poetic. "No, honey," I said softly. "I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate?" "That's what I'm trying to find out. Mom, I need your help. Please, everything is falling apart. Brandon left me. He stayed in Europe with another woman. And now this, Mom. I don't understand what's happening." There it was, the confirmation. Brandon had abandoned her, likely when the money dried up. Or when he realized how deep the legal troubles ran. Poor Emily. She had sacrificed everything for a worthless man. "I'm so sorry, dear," I said. "Where are you now?" "At the apartment, at least for now." "Mom, can I come see you? I don't have anyone else." The irony was exquisite. Only now, after being abandoned by the man she chose over me, did she remember she had a mother. "Of course, sweetheart," I said gently. "Come whenever you're ready." 1 hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my daughter, unrecognizable. I opened the door and there she was, my daughter. But not the woman who had boarded that plane. Emily stood on my front step looking like a faded photograph of herself. She had lost weight, her cheekbones were sharp. And her eyes were ringed with dark circles, red and swollen from crying. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her hair unbrushed, She looked less like a traveler and more like someone who had run away from a war. For a brief moment, I thought she might fall into my arms. But she stopped herself, as if remembering everything she had done. "Come in," I said quietly. "Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat at the same kitchen table where, weeks before, I had laughed at her arrogance. Now she sat hunched over, shoulders trembling, hands wrapped around the warm mug like it was the only stable thing in her world. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I didn't treat you well." "It's in the past," I said softly. "No," she insisted, voice cracking. "It's not. I treated you horribly. I said awful things. And now," she broke, covering her face with her hands. "Now I have no one." I remained silent. I knew she needed to speak. "What happened with Brandon?" I asked gently. She swallowed. "He left me, Mom, for a girl in Paris. She was 25, worked at the hotel bar. He told me he needed time to think. But he took the rest of the money with him. When I woke up, he was gone. His phone was disconnected. His email shut down. He vanished." I said nothing. "And now the banks." She dug her nails into her palms. "Mom, I think he forged my signature. There are loans under my name. There are debt collectors. And now this eviction notice, Mom. I don't know what to do." Real tears, raw and unfiltered, streamed down her face. For a moment, a part of me, a mother's instinct, ached to hold her. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she sold my home. The way she referred to my life as something smaller. "Did you go to a lawyer?" I asked. "I don't have money for a lawyer." She wiped her face. We spent everything in Europe. And Brandon took what little was left." "And what are you going to do?" She hesitated, swallowing her pride. "I was hoping, maybe I could stay with you. Just for a while. Until I find a job, or a room somewhere cheap." There it was. The moment I had waited for. After selling my house. After throwing me to the wolves. She came back to my door. Not out of love, but necessity. "Of course," I said, with perfectly measured warmth. "This will always be your home." She looked shocked. "Really, Mom? After everything? You are my daughter. That will never change." She stood and hugged me, finally. But it wasn't the embrace of a repentant child. It was the desperate grip of a drowning woman clinging to driftwood. I hugged her back, not with unconditional love. With calculation. Later that afternoon, she left to gather a few things from the apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, hands folded, listening to the silence. It had all begun. Blank, blank. Emily moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, everything that remained of her beautiful life. I watched her unpack in her old bedroom. The same room where she once pasted posters of ballet dancers and wrote love letters to boys in school. Now, she quietly folded sweaters, avoiding my eyes, the shame visible in every movement. "Mom," she said, holding up a manila envelope. "I found this among Brandon's things. It has your name on it. I think it's from Dad." My heart jolted. Another envelope. "My name?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Let me see." She handed it to me. It was smaller than the first one. Newer. The handwriting, Arthur's. Emily frowned. "I never knew Dad had more letters. Do you?" "I'm not sure." I lied. "I've never seen this." Maybe he left something for you. Something important. Should we open it?" Her voice was laced with hope. Like a child searching for answers in a fortune cookie. I pretended to hesitate. "Perhaps we should wait." "No, Mom," she said softly. "Please, open it." I broke the seal carefully. Inside was a short letter and a small key. Emily leaned over my shoulder as I read. "Marion, if you are opening this after receiving the first envelope, it means our daughter is going through hardship. This key opens a safety deposit box. Number 247. At the central bank. There is something there that may help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love. Arthur." Emily gasped. "A safety deposit box? Dad had one? What do you think is inside?" I closed the letter slowly. "I don't know. Mom, we have to see. Maybe it's something we can sell. Something that could get us out of this mess. Us. Even now." She spoke as if we were equals. as if she hadn't abandoned me. I suppose, I said with a sigh. We can go tomorrow. That night, for the first time in months, she cooked dinner. It tasted like guilt more than food. We ate mostly in silence. Eventually, she whispered, I thought I knew love, Mom, but I didn't. Brandon didn't love me. He used me. And she swallowed hard. I used you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not the cruel woman who sold my life, but the lost girl who had forgotten her own soul. You're home now, I said simply. Rest. But inside, I thought, not yet, Emily. This is only the beginning. The next morning, we went to the bank. Emily walked beside me like a ghost of herself, eyes hollow, fingers nervously intertwined. She was no longer the arrogant woman who once lectured me about moving into something smaller. Her silence was heavy now, filled with fear. At the reception desk, I presented my ID and the key Arthur had left in the second envelope. The banker glanced at it, typed something into her computer, then nodded. This way, Mrs. Hale. She led us through a quiet corridor into the vault room. Rows upon rows of steel boxes filled the walls. She guided us to box 247. Whenever you're ready, she said, then stepped away. Emily's breath caught. Mom, she whispered, what do you think is inside? I don't know, I said truthfully, but I had my suspicions. Arthur never acted without reason. With steady hands, I inserted the key and opened the box. Inside were velvet pouches, a few official-looking envelopes, and a sealed letter. Emily reached for one pouch with trembling fingers. She opened it and gasped. Inside were jewels, not costume jewelry, but diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, pearls. Some I recognized from Arthur's grandmother. Others I had never seen before. Mom? Emily's voice cracked. This must be worth a fortune. She opened pouch after pouch, each one shimmering with wealth. Necklaces, rings, brooches, decades of careful, hidden accumulation. Then she found the letter from Arthur and read aloud. These jewels belonged to our family for generations. Some I purchased over the years. Their total value is estimated at around $200. Use them wisely. They are not trophies, but tools. Emily sat down heavily on the bench, eyes wide with panic and hope merging into confusion. Mom, with this, you could buy back the beach house? You could. I watched her carefully. Her first instinct was not nostalgia, not remorse, but money. She still had not learned. We could sell some, she continued, desperation rising. I could pay off Brandon's debts. I could. Are you sure? I said softly. You want to use your father's legacy to pay for the mess Brandon left behind? She froze. What other choice do I have? If I don't pay, Mom, they'll come after me. They'll take everything. They might even take this house. This house, my house, the one she believed I barely owned. Think carefully, Emily, I said. Once these are gone, they're gone forever. We took the box home. Emily spread the jewels across my kitchen table, arranging them like puzzle pieces, whispering numbers under her breath. I saw it in her eyes, conflict. Greed versus guilt, fear versus pride. That evening, she sat with her head in her hands. Mom, she murmured, I never asked how much they sold the house for, or the truck. I just let Brandon handle it. I thought we were starting a new life. And what life was that? I asked. She didn't answer. Blank. Blank. Over the next days, Emily fell into a grim routine. She called banks, creditors, loan officers. I could hear fragments through the door. No, I didn't know. Yes, I was in Europe. No, I never signed that. Every night, she cried when she thought I couldn't hear. But I heard everything. One afternoon, she finally said it, the words I had waited to hear. I'm going to sell most of the jewels. Are you certain? I asked. I don't have a choice. Mom, it may not be enough, but it will keep them from seizing everything. Everything. She still didn't know I could wipe her problems away with a single phone call. Which debts will you pay first? I asked. She sighed. The ones with real collateral. The ones that could lead to foreclosure or court. She was learning, slowly. Painfully, that life has rules. That choices have cost. That night, Mr. Whitaker called. Mrs. Hale, I've completed the investigation regarding Brandon's debts. How bad is it? Worse than expected. He owes over $200. Multiple banks, private lenders, and we found proof he forged Emily's signature on at least 2 loans. I tightened my grip on the phone. Can she be cleared? If we prove fraud and coercion. Yes, but it will be a costly battle. A specialist attorney would charge around $50 minimum. And no guarantee. I closed my eyes. Prepare everything. I will pay. Are you sure you want to do this secretly? Yes, I said. She must believe she fought her way out herself. Not bought her way out. When I hung up, I found Emily in the living room. She was turning an emerald bracelet over in her hands. The lamplight catching the green stone. She wasn't crying. She was thinking. What are you thinking about? I asked. About Dad, she whispered. About how ashamed he would be of me. Your father loved you, I replied. He taught me responsibility, family, loyalty, and I traded all of it for. She couldn't finish. For the first time since she returned, I saw it, true remorse. Not regret for consequences, remorse for actions. People make mistakes. Emily, I said gently, the important part is what you do after. She looked up at me with haunted eyes. How'd I fix what I destroyed, Mom? I didn't answer. Because she wasn't ready to hear it yet. In the days that followed, Emily took her first real steps into a life she had never known, the life of consequences. She woke early, made lists, dialed numbers, waited on hold for hours, explaining and re-explaining her situation to people who didn't care. I watched her wear down. Piece by piece. Pride gave way to fatigue. Entitlement gave way to fear. And then, something unexpected began to surface. Determination. One evening, she came home with a small folded piece of paper in her hand. She looked exhausted, her shoes scuffed, her shoulders slumped. Mom, she said quietly. I got a job. I raised an eyebrow. A job? She nodded, eyes red but steady. Cleaning offices at night. It's part-time, minimum wage, but it's something. A part of me, some primal maternal instinct, ached at the thought of my daughter scrubbing floors in the dead of night. But another part of me, the woman Arthur had quietly prepared, knew this was necessary, knew it was the only path. Are you sure you can handle that kind of work? I asked. I don't have a choice. Mom, she replied, I need to learn to survive on my own. I won't be a burden to you. That night, I lay awake listening for the sound of the front door. It was past midnight when she finally returned. Her steps were slow, dragging, but there was something different about her. She wasn't broken, she was humbled. The next morning, she joined me in the kitchen, sore and bleary-eyed. How was it? I asked. Hard, she admitted, but some of the other women helped me. One of them, Mrs. Green, she's been cleaning offices for 20 years. She showed me how to mop faster, how to wrap the cords so they don't tangle. I nodded. Did she say anything else? Emily hesitated, then looked down. She asked me how I ended up there. I told her my husband left me with debts. She said. Emily's voice wavered. She said there are 2 kinds of women in those hallways. The ones who never had a chance, and the ones who had every chance and blew it. And what did you say? Emily swallowed. I told her the truth. I had everything. And I threw it away. She didn't cry. She didn't justify. She simply said it. Blank. Blank. Weeks passed. Our home, once silent and heavy, began to change, not with laughter, but with effort. Emily woke before dawn, studied bank statements, took calls from debt collectors, then left again each evening to clean offices while the world slept. One night, I heard her crying quietly in her room. But this time, she wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for who she had been. One Sunday afternoon, while she was sorting papers, she said, Mom, I've been thinking, once I stabilize everything, once I pay what I can, I want to find a way to help women like Mrs. Green. Women who work themselves to the bone but are invisible to the world. You have a long road ahead, I said softly. Are you prepared for that? I know, she whispered, but for the first time, I want to earn something. Not take it. Blank, underscore, blank. Then, one morning, I received a call from Mr. Whitaker. Mrs. Hale, I have news. We located Brandon. Where? In Paris, just as Emily guessed. But here's the interesting part. He's trying to obtain French residency through a fake marriage with the same young woman he left with. A humorless smile touched my lips. A fake marriage? Yes, but more importantly, we have acquired proof that he forged Emily's signature intentionally, to use her identity while planning his escape. And that means? It means Emily can be legally cleared of the debts. With this evidence, we can prove fraud. She won't owe a cent. I closed my eyes. Relief threatened to push tears forward. But I held them back. Begin the process. Quietly. Do not tell her until it is done. As you wish. When I hung up, Emily was standing in the doorway, watching my face. Who was that, Mom? I kept my voice neutral. Wrong number. Lying had become natural, but not for selfishness, for protection. Blank, underscore, blank. In the evenings, Emily and I began to speak more, not about debts or Brandon, but about smaller things, memories of Arthur, childhood summers at the beach, regrets, dreams. One night, she sat beside me with a notebook filled with scribbles. I've been calculating, she said, if I keep working nights and cut expenses, I can start paying off the smaller loans in a few months. I don't want to run anymore. Something shifted in her eyes. It wasn't desperation. It was pride. Mom, she said quietly, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Not yet, but I want you to know, if I could go back, I would never have chosen him over you. I thought love meant loyalty to him. But now I see, real love doesn't ask you to destroy your family. I said nothing. I simply reached over and placed my hand over hers. She didn't need answers. She needed to keep walking. Blank, underscore, blank. One evening, I found her standing in front of the mirror, slowly pulling on her janitor's uniform. She caught me watching her and gave a small, rueful smile. Mom, she said softly, do you know the difference between being poor and being broken? No, I replied. Tell me. Being poor is not having money. Being broken is not having dignity. I was never poor, Mom, but I was broken. She picked up her mop and bucket and left for work before I could speak. When the door clicked shut, I whispered to the empty house. Arthur, she's almost ready. The weeks that followed felt eerily calm. Like the quiet seconds before a storm breaks. Emily continued working nights, paying what little she could toward debts she believed she owed. She no longer asked me for help. She no longer complained. She carried her shame like a burden she refused to set down. And for the first time in her life, she walked through the world with humility. During the day, she sorted bills at the kitchen table, her face pale and serious, lips moving silently as she did the math. At night, she scrubbed floors alongside women who didn't know her name or story. And every time she came home, drenched in sweat and fatigue, she said the same 3 words. I'm still here. Not defeated, not destroyed. Still here. Blank, underscore, blank. One morning, as I poured coffee into 2 cups, the phone rang. I recognized the number at once. Mrs. Hale, Mr. Whitaker said, I have important news. I glanced toward the hall. Made sure Emily was in her room. Yes? We have completed the process. Legally, your daughter is now clear of all debts tied to Brandon. The forged documents, the falsified loans, all nullified. It wasn't easy, but the evidence was undeniable. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. He paused. Are you going to tell her now? No, I said firmly, not yet, not until she is standing on her own feet. You still intend to let her struggle? Yes, I replied quietly, because if I rescue her too soon, she will never learn why she needed rescuing in the first place. He exhaled slowly. You are a remarkable woman, Mrs. Hale. No, I said, I am simply a mother who understands her child. Blank, underscore, blank. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to water the garden. Evelyn Harper appeared at the fence. As she often did, a basket of apples in hand, eyes sharp with curiosity. Marian, she said carefully, may I ask you something blunt? You always do. Did you know Emily was going to return in this condition? I kept my gaze on the flowers. Life has a way of humbling us. That may be true, she said, stepping closer, but there's something different about her now. She's not the same girl who left. She hesitated, then added, she looks at you differently. I turned to Evelyn. What do you mean? She looks at you like someone afraid to lose you. Not because she needs you, but because she finally understands what you are worth. I didn't respond, but Evelyn wasn't finished. Marian, listen carefully. If you choose to forgive her, let it be forgiveness with truth. Let her see the woman you really are, not the poor widow she thought she abandoned. I nodded. In time. She placed the basket on the porch. Then don't take too long. Some lessons are only powerful while wounds are still fresh. Blank. Blank. That evening, Emily came home later than usual. She sat at the kitchen table, removing her shoes slowly, rubbing her sore feet. Long night? I asked. She nodded. Yes. Mrs. Green wasn't feeling well. I took over her floors. I smiled slightly. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, she said simply. She's older than you, Mom, and unlike me, she never had a choice. There was a new gravity in her voice. It made me wonder how different her life might have been if she had met someone like Mrs. Green years ago, instead of Brandon. Blank. Days passed, and Emily began setting small goals. She created envelopes labeled groceries, rent, utilities, even though she wasn't paying rent yet. She washed dishes without being asked. She mended clothes. She spoke softly. But she still didn't know the truth. She still believed she was living in my only home, under my fragile pension, among my meager possessions. She had no idea the walls around her were mine in every possible sense, that the house, the land, the trust fund, and the very air she breathed were safeguarded by Arthur Holdings, Inc. Blank. One evening, she approached me with a strange look on her face. Mom, she said, I want to ask you something, and please be honest. I set my book down. Ask. When I left before, and I sold the house, did you hate me? The room fell silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to hush. After a long moment, I said, no, I didn't hate you. She blinked. Then what did you feel? I held her gaze. I felt grief. The kind a mother feels when she watches her child throw herself off a cliff, while insisting she's flying. She flinched. I didn't need revenge, Emily, I continued. I needed you to understand pain. Your own, and mine. She covered her face, but she didn't cry, not then. She whispered through her fingers. I don't deserve your kindness. No, I said quietly, you don't, not yet. Blank. The next morning, Emily left early for work, and I made a decision. It was time. I called Mr. Whitaker. Set the meeting, I said. At my office? Yes, and prepare everything. The property deeds? All of it, the accounts, the holdings, Arthur's letters. He was silent for a long moment. Then, Mrs. Hale, that will change your daughter forever. Yes, I said, it will. And are you ready for that? I closed my eyes. I've been ready since the day she sold my house. 3 days later, I told Emily we had an appointment. With a lawyer, I explained calmly, pouring tea into 2 thermoses. Someone who might help you with your legal problems. I want you to come with me. She looked hesitant, ashamed. Mom, I don't want you to pay for anything. I don't even know if I can afford a consultation. Don't worry about that, I said gently. Let's just listen. She nodded, swallowing hard. I could tell she was terrified of more bad news. More consequences. She wore her cleanest clothes, braided her hair, and sat in silence beside me on the bus ride downtown. When we arrived at Mr. Daniel Whitaker's office, she paused at the entrance, clutching her bag tight against her chest. Mom, she whispered, what if he tells me I'm going to jail? Then we'll face it, I said, together. We stepped inside. Mr. Whitaker greeted us with a solemn nod. Mrs. Hale, Miss Hale, please, Come in. Emily sat on the edge of her chair, hands folded, bracing for impact. Mr. Whitaker laid a thick folder on his desk. Miss Hale, he began, before we discuss anything, I want you to know something. You are not alone in this room. Your mother has been by your side every day since this began. Emily's eyes widened. I don't understand. He opened the first folder. These documents concern your debts, he said. We have spent the past several weeks investigating Brandon Lewis and his financial dealings under your name. We have located forged signatures, falsified loan requests, and evidence of intent to flee the country using your identity. Emily stared blankly. Forged? Yes, Mr. Whitaker said firmly. You were a victim of fraud. Legally, you owe nothing. She blinked rapidly, confused. But, the collectors, the banks? All nullified, he said. Your record is being cleared. You will not be held responsible. Tears filled her eyes, but not tears of relief. Tears of confusion. She turned to me, stunned. Mom, how is this even possible? I didn't answer. Not yet. Mr. Whitaker opened the second folder. Property deeds, bank documents, corporate files, all bearing one name. Marion Hale. But Emily didn't see it. Not yet. She read the first page. Then the second. Then her breath caught. Arthur Holdings, Inc., she whispered. This is the company from the eviction notice? Yes, Mr. Whitaker replied. Your father's company, and your mother is its sole owner. Her hands shook violently. She lifted her eyes to mine. Mom, what is all this? I spoke softly. Your father left more than you knew. Emily, much more. She looked back at the pages. The apartment building where she had lived. The beach house. The coastal motel. 6 homes. 3 investment accounts. Generational wealth, hidden behind silence. She froze. She looked like a woman struck by lightning, not burned, but illuminated. How long have you known? She whispered. Since the day you called me from the doctor's office, I answered. Her lips parted. And when I came back from Europe, when I was crying, begging, cleaning floors, you knew? Yes. She stood abruptly, her knees almost buckling. Why? She choked out. Why would you let me suffer when you could have fixed everything? There it was, the thunder after lightning. I stood slowly. Because if I had saved you with money, you would have learned nothing. You didn't need wealth. You needed worth. She stared at me, stunned, shaking. I needed you to understand what you destroyed. I continued. Not the house. Not the truck. Me, Emily. You destroyed me. And until you felt destruction yourself, you would never truly see me. Emily dropped to her knees. She didn't cry like a child. She broke like a woman. I sold your life, she sobbed. I sold your memories. Oh God, Mom, I sold everything you and Dad built. I knelt beside her and placed my hand over her trembling back. Yes, I said, you did. She looked up, tears streaking down her face. Do you hate me? No, my voice was quiet but unwavering. I don't hate you, I waited for you. She closed her eyes. What did you wait for? For you to become someone I could give it all to, without losing you again. Mr. Whitaker quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. We stayed on the floor for a long time, mother and daughter, silence and storm. Finally, she whispered, Am I forgiven? I forgave you, I said. The question is, will you forgive yourself? She didn't answer. Not then. Because that answer must be lived, not spoken. When we stood, she didn't look at the deeds. She didn't touch the documents. She simply took my hand. And for the first time in her life, she held it carefully. We left Mr. Whitaker's office without speaking. The city felt louder than usual, cars exhaling, crosswalks chirping, people laughing into their phones. Emily walked beside me like a woman who had crossed a desert and reached water but didn't yet know how to drink. On the bus, she stared at her hands. When we reached our stop, she finally said, so softly I almost missed it, Mom, I don't deserve what you did. I know, I replied. That's why it works. She looked at me then, startled. and almost smiled through the wreckage. At home, she stood in the kitchen as if it were new to her. She pulled out a chair, then pushed it back in, like a guest deciding whether to sit. Finally, she whispered, "I need to tell you something before we go any further." I waited. "I'm not quitting my job." I blinked. "You don't have to punish yourself forever, Emily." "It's not punishment," she said, shaking her head. "It's a marker. I need to keep working until I recognize the person in the mirror. I don't want to wake up and be the woman who sold your life again." I studied her. "Then keep working." She exhaled, relief and fear braided together. "Thank you." We cooked dinner together that night. For the first time in years. She chopped onions too slowly, and I pretended not to notice. When tears from the onions rolled down her cheeks, she wiped them with the back of her wrist and didn't apologize for crying. I set the table. We ate in the hush that only truth can make. Afterward, she reached for a dish towel. "I'll wash," she said. "You dry." Deal. It was the smallest truce, and the most important. The next days moved strangely. Emily slept a little better. She still woke early, still sorted envelopes at the table. But her face was different, less hunted, more present. She placed a new envelope in the row and labeled it with careful block letters, "Giving." She didn't tell me why. 2 evenings later, she came home later than usual. Uniform damp with sweat. She set a grocery bag on the counter, milk, eggs, vegetables, a loaf of bread, and then a second bag, filled with diapers and formula. I raised an eyebrow. "For a coworker," she said, almost shy. "Mrs. Ramirez, her sitter quit. She's alone." I thought Dad would have wanted. I nodded. We didn't need to finish the sentence. The next morning, Evelyn Harper knocked and stepped in without waiting. As old friends do. She glanced at Emily's uniform hanging on the chair, then at my face. "Well?" she asked quietly. "Well," I echoed. Evelyn leaned on the counter and lowered her voice. "Rumors are flying. Marion, people saw you too at that downtown law office. Bank tellers have long tongues. They're whispering that debts are vanishing and papers are moving." "People talk," I said. She studied me for a long moment. "You did this." "I did what had to be done." Evelyn sighed. "You're a better mother than I am." "No," I said. "I'm a stubborn one." Emily came out then, hair braided, face scrubbed clean. She kissed my cheek, murmured, "Back by noon," and left for a day shift she'd picked up, filing and dusting for a property manager who paid in cash. When the door closed, Evelyn turned to me. "Is she different?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "She looks at work and doesn't see humiliation anymore. She sees belonging." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Funny how the ground can teach what no lecture can." She reached for my hand. "Tell me one thing, Marion. Did it hurt, letting her fall?" "Every minute," I said, "but pulling her up too soon would have been a different kind of cruelty." Evelyn squeezed my fingers, then let her climb, and when she reaches the ledge, show her the view. That evening, Emily returned with a stack of flyers. She spread them on the table. Classes at the community college, Intro to Social Work. Psychology 101, Nonprofit Basics. She didn't look at me as she aligned the edges. "I'm not promising anything," she said, "but I'm thinking of taking a class. Maybe 2. "On what?" "On helping people," she answered, almost embarrassed. "I don't even know how yet. But these last weeks, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Ramirez, I keep thinking that no one sees them. I didn't. I want to be someone who sees." I felt Arthur in the room then. The way I sometimes felt him in the steady tick of the kitchen clock. In the weight of the truck keys in my palm. "Go on," he seemed to say. "Let her say it." Emily swallowed. "I'd like to keep living here. If you'll have me, not as a daughter hiding from the world. As a woman who pays her share." "This is your home," I said. "It's yours," she corrected softly. "I want it to be ours. But differently than before. I'll handle utilities this month. Groceries next. We'll make a chart, if you want." I laughed before I could help it. "A chart?" She smiled, shy and real. "I need guardrails." "Then we'll draw them," I said, "together." She reached for the dish towel again and began to dry the plates. The sound of porcelain and cotton was its own kind of forgiveness. Days slipped into a rhythm I hadn't dared to imagine, quiet, deliberate, honest. Emily left for work before dusk and returned after midnight, texting me a single word when she was safe, home. I left the porch light on until I saw that message. Some habits are love made visible. One Friday, Mr. Whitaker called to say the last of the forged loans had been cleared. The final notices withdrawn. It's done, he said simply. All of it. Thank you, I replied. When I hung up, Emily was standing in the doorway again, reading my face as if it were a weather report. Good news? She asked. Yes, I said, a long storm passing. She didn't pry. Instead, she brought out 2 mugs, poured tea, and said, Tell me about Dad. What do you want to know? The small things, she said, the parts one rushed past. So I told her about the way Arthur kept a penny in his shoe on job interview days for luck. The way he could fix a leaky faucet with a rubber band and a prayer. How he believed a house only became a home when you'd fed a stranger in its kitchen. Emily listened with her whole face, her whole body, as if she could stitch a father back into her bones with stories. Later, when she went to dress for work, I saw her pause in the hallway and touch the photo of Arthur holding her at age 5. She didn't cry, she only nodded to him, like a soldier receiving orders. On Sunday, I suggested we drive to the beach house. Emily froze, then took a breath and nodded. We got into Arthur's truck, mine again, and headed toward the coast with the windows down. The ocean appeared like an old friend at the end of a long road. We stood on the porch a long time, listening. The house felt the way a book feels when you open to a page you once loved, familiar. Dangerous. Dear. Emily walked the room slowly, touching door frames, straightening a picture, pausing at the table where Arthur used to read the paper, where she once did homework. She sat on the sofa and stared at her hands. Mom, she said finally, I want to apologize, not just for selling the house, for not seeing what it was. This place isn't a property. It's a language I forgot how to speak. It's forgiven, I said. She nodded, then looked out at the line where sea met sky. I have an idea, she said. It's not fully formed, but what if this house could be more than memory? What if it could be shelter? For who? I asked, though I already knew. For women who are leaving, men like Brandon, she said carefully, or leaving versions of themselves that keep choosing men like Brandon. Just a stopover, a place to breathe, to plan. I closed my eyes. If Arthur's spirit had been a subtle hum before, now it was a chord, clear, resonant, certain. We can do that, I said. Emily turned to me, her face fierce and soft at once. We'll need rules, safety, partnerships. It won't be simple. Nothing worth building ever is. She stood and walked to the door, then looked back at me with a small, incredulous smile. Mom, do you realize? We're talking like partners. We are, I said, at last. Outside, the ocean kept doing what oceans do, arriving and leaving. Leaving and arriving, writing and rewriting the shore. We stood there, mother and daughter, learning how to let the water take what it must, and how to keep what matters when the tide goes out. Emily reached for my hand. This time, she held it not like a confession, but like a promise. 6 months passed. If someone had walked into our lives then, they would have seen 2 women living quietly in a modest home, sharing chores, bills, dinner. They wouldn't know that the house they stood in was part of an estate large enough to secure 5 lifetimes. They wouldn't know about the forged debts erased, the hidden empire restored, or the years of betrayal and grief that preceded this calm. They would just see peace. But I knew the truth. Peace is never quiet. It is earned, hammered out on the anvil of choice. Emily continued working nights for a while, not out of necessity, but out of principle. She saved nearly everything she earned. And one morning, she showed me an acceptance letter from the local university. Mom, she said, voice trembling slightly, I applied to the master's program in social work. I start next semester. I looked up from my newspaper. How will you pay? I'll pay for it myself, she said, with what I've saved. You don't have to. I do, she said firmly. If I don't invest in my future, I'll never believe I'm worthy of it. I said nothing, only nodded. She no longer needed my approval. She needed my witness. Evelyn Harper became our frequent guest. She had been present through the unraveling. And now she returned to watch the repair. One afternoon, she sat in my kitchen, sipping tea, observing Emily through the window as she watered the garden. "Marian," she said quietly, "I have to confess something. At first, I thought you were cruel, letting your own daughter fall like that. And now? Now I think you're the wisest woman I've ever met. You didn't let her fall, you let her land." I smiled. "There's a difference." Evelyn nodded. "Yes, falling breaks people, landing changes them." One warm evening, Emily and I sat on the porch, dinner plates on our laps, watching the sky blush toward night. She was quiet for a while, then said, "Mom, I received a letter today." "From whom?" She hesitated. "From Brandon." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "He's in prison," she said flatly. "In France, sentenced for marriage fraud. He wants forgiveness." I watched her carefully. "What do you feel?" She leaned back, looking at the horizon. "Nothing. Not hate, not love, just nothing. I don't belong in that story anymore." "Will you respond?" She shook her head. "There's nothing left to say. He spoke to a version of me that no longer exists." Silence settled between us, soft, final. After a while, she added, almost to herself, "He told me everything I wanted to hear. You taught me everything I needed to learn. I used to think love was comfort. Now I know, it's instruction." I closed my eyes. Arthur was in every breeze that night. We visited the beach house regularly after that, planning its new life. Emily brought notebooks filled with ideas, intake procedures, collaboration with shelters, trauma counseling programs, transitional beds for women with children. She researched funding grants, draft mission statements, scribbled names. One morning, she slid a piece of paper across the table. At the top, written in steady hand, "The Hale Haven. A transitional home for women rebuilding after crisis." I traced the name with my finger. "Hale Haven," I murmured. "A sanctuary." "It's what Dad would have wanted," she said. "He always believed a house isn't a home until it opens its doors." We both knew this. It wasn't charity. It was continuation. In town, whispers about us grew strange. Rumors swirled. Some said I had won the lottery. Others that a distant uncle had died. Some claimed Emily must have married a rich man in Europe who died. Nobody guessed the truth. Because nobody imagines a story where the wealth was never the point. One day, at the grocery store, a woman eyed Emily with curiosity and finally approached her. "I heard your mother is very wealthy now." The woman said, "If that's true, why are you still working?" Emily's response was simple. "Because money doesn't build character. Work does." I watched her transform over those months, not into someone new, but someone whole. A woman who no longer needed to be rescued. A woman who could become the rescuer. One evening, as she prepared lesson plans for her social work classes, she asked, "Mom, do you realize we are starting over?" "No," I said, "we are not starting over. We are continuing differently." She smiled. On the first anniversary of Arthur's death, we drove to the beach house alone. No guests, no ceremony, just us. We cooked his favorite meal, lit a candle, and placed his wedding ring, the one he never removed, on the mantel. Emily stood before it and whispered, "We did it, Dad." I didn't correct her. She wasn't wrong. That night, sitting on the porch he built, she turned to me. "Mom?" "Yes?" "I want you to know, if you had simply handed me the money, I would have thanked you and kept destroying myself. You didn't save me from the world. You saved me from who I was in it." I looked at her, this woman who had once been a child on my lap, then a stranger at my door, then a broken soul on my floor, and now, finally, my equal. "I didn't save you," I said quietly. "I allowed you to earn your return." She took my hand, not like a daughter seeking protection, but like a woman forming alliance. "Are we okay, Mom?" "We are more than okay," I said. "We are correct." We watched the tide roll in, the water rewriting the shore as it had done 1,000 times before. Emily rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm not afraid anymore," she murmured. "Of what?" "Of becoming lost." "You won't," I said. You've learned where home is. She closed her eyes. And for the first time since Arthur died, I felt it, not hope. Not healing, but arrival. This was never a story about revenge. It was a story about restoration. Not punishment, but instruction. Not victory, but alignment. And in the end, I gained something far greater than justice. I gained back my daughter, not the one I raised, but the one I had always hoped she would become. Was it revenge, or redemption? Sometimes, we don't rise to punish others. We rise to rebuild ourselves. Tell me, would you have forgiven her? I'm listening.